Act locally. Act locally for justice. Act locally for equity. Be more inclusive in all of your settings. Progress is not inevitable. It's unfortunate that progress isn't just like this trajectory where we're always just going to keep getting better. That's not the case. We get better, we make progress because individuals wake up every day, join together, and push each other forward to make progress. We're seeing in our world that progress is not inevitable. And I hope here at Center, we can wake up every morning, bond together, join together as a community and in our individual groups, and let's push forward to make progress. I am so happy to be part of this community. I am so happy for the students, for the faculty and the staff who joined together this afternoon and again this evening to celebrate and to honor Dr. King, but also to push this community forward. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I just love being here with you, and what a treasure to be in a community that wants to move our world forward in a positive way with justice and with equity. Looking forward to this program tonight. Thanks for joining.
Good evening again. My name is Imani Smith, and now is the moment of invocation. Let us pray. God of our past, present, and future, we thank you for the opportunity to join together tonight for the celebration of your servant, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We thank you for the light, hope, and courage that he delivered to us and the inspiration that his work offers to this day. We ask that you shine that light through us, O God, and bend our hearts like morality to justice. Our nation, our world is inflicted with troubled times, with disease, division, and death. But we ask that in your mercy, you would peel off the layers of facade that we may address the core of our issues. Grant us the will to do what is right, not just what is comfortable, to see the color of each other's skin, to see our differences, and celebrate, uplift, and include them. Help us to not only do the work of beating back racism, but overcoming it, being anti-racist. Help us to see that this work, this change, is not that of a few, but the commitment of a generation. We ask this in your power, wisdom, and grace. Amen.
Here's Maya Angelou's Abundant Hope, written as legacy for Dr. Martin Luther King. Reverend Martin Luther King, the great soul, flew from the Creator bearing manna of hope for his country, starving severely from an absence of compassion. Martin Luther King, the great spirit, came from the Creator, proffering a sparkling fountain of fair play to his country parched and deformed by hate. The whole man came forth with a brain of gentle wisdom to persuade quiet upon the loud misery of the mob. A whole man stood out with a mellifluous voice to bind the joints of cruelty. A whole man came in the midst of a murderous nightmare, surrounded by demons of war. He dared to dream peace and serenity. With a heart of faith, he hoped to resurrect his nation. I open my mouth to the Lord, and I won't turn back. Martin Luther King faced the racial mountain of segregation and bade it move. A giant mound of human ignorance, centuries old and rigid in its determination, did move. However slightly, however infinitesimally, it did move. I will go, I shall go, I'll see what the end will be. Martin Luther King brought winds of healing to his country, reeling unsteady with the illness of racial prejudice. Screams of vulgarity could not silence him. Fire, bombs, and dogs could not take his voice away. On my knees, I told God how you treated me, on my knees. He knew himself a child of God, on a mission from God, and standing in the hand of God, he spoke to the hideous hearts and to the bitter monstrosities and asked them to transform their ways and thereby liberate his country. Representing the grace of heaven, he spoke to the evils of hell Representing gentleness, he sang to brutes. He brought the great songs of faith, persuading men and women to think beyond their baser nature. Lord, don't move your mountain, just give me strength to climb it. He hummed the old gospels, encouraging the folk to act beyond their puny selves. You don't have to move that stumbling block, Lord, just lead me around it. Leader to those who could be led and hero to millions, Martin Luther King was father to Yolanda, Martin III, Dexter, and Bernice. He was lover, friend, and husband to Coretta Scott King. Spoke respectfully of the Torah. He spoke respectfully of the Quran. In India, walked in the footprints of Mohandas Mahatma Gandhi. Christianity made him patient with all religions, and his tremendous heart made him believe that all people were his people. All creeds and cultures were comfortable in his giant embrace, and all just causes were his to extol and support. Through sermons and allocutions with praise songs and orations, he preached fair play and serenity from handcuffs and prison garb, from leg irons and prison bars. He taught triumph over loss and love over despair, hallelujah over the dirges and joy over moaning. Fear not, we've come too far to turn back. We are not afraid, and we shall overcome. We shall overcome. Deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday.
Good evening. My name is Brianna Tilley, and I'm a first-year student athlete from Louisville, Kentucky, and a member of the women's soccer team, as well as a member of the Student Diversity Athlete Board. I have the privilege of introducing 3 incredible individuals who will be sharing research and information regarding a powerful project titled Pathways to Diversity. Our featured speakers will provide a brief overview of the groundbreaking and often difficult pathway Black students navigated during the early years of desegregation at Center. Speaking first will be Miss Carrie Frye, who is the Director of Library Services here at Center. She will be followed by Special Collections Librarian and Archivist, Miss Beth Morgan. And in short order, Joanna Marcelin from the Center Class of 2020 will share a few remarks with us as well. A quick note about Miss Marcelin, she will be joining the Office of Diversity and Inclusion next month in the role of Diversity and Inclusion Coordinator. At this time, I'd like to turn the mic over to Miss Carrie Frye.
Good evening. I'm Carrie Frye, Director of the Grace Doherty Library of Center College. And tonight I will share some brief information regarding work librarians, faculty, and staff have completed over the past several years to discover materials relating to the desegregation of our campus. The overarching goal of the project we titled Pathways to Diversity is to construct an online archive of the historical experiences of Black students on Associated Colleges of the South, ACS, campuses, with the era of desegregation as our initial focus. Center, Furman, Rollins, and Washington and Lee collaborated on the research, documentation, and sharing of archival materials related to desegregation at each participating institution. As Southern colleges founded long before the Civil Rights movement in the United States, the experiences and stories of our Black students, staff, and faculty have not been systematically archived or fully understood within the historical context of our local communities. We seek to uncover and illuminate these historical moments and narratives in order to improve institutional understanding of our past and help our current students to comprehend the cultural, social, and ethical factors that have provided the impetus for change and growth in the area of diversity and inclusion. The 4 collaborating institutions possess the stories and retain the experiences of our Black students, staff, and faculty in sometimes hidden institutional collections and in a multitude of formats. Many of these stories and experiences are held only in the memories of the people who were here. Hence, oral histories have been recorded and woven together with physical historical materials. During the first several years of the project, many faculty and students worked with librarians on each ACS campus to gather and record stories and artifacts related to the experience of our Black communities. We encountered gaping holes in our archives, highlighting the importance of accurately capturing the diversity and events on our campuses through inclusive and active collection of artifacts and oral histories. Tonight, our archivist Beth Morgan and Jojo Marcelin, recent alumna and diversity and inclusion coordinator at Center College, will give you a brief overview of the groundbreaking and often difficult pathway of Black students navigated during the early years of education at Center College. And now I'll pass this over to Beth Morgan, our archivist.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for being here tonight. I'm Beth Morgan, as Carrie mentioned, the archivist at the college library. And during this section of the program, I'm going to be providing a brief overview of the history of desegregation at Centre College. Our archival records show that the desegregation of Centre College was a process spanning over a decade, beginning with the Groves administration in the late 1940s and finally occurring under the Spraggins administration in the late 1950s, with the first Black students attending in the early 1960s. Centre College was founded in 1819 as an all-male, all-white institution. Centre did not have an official policy explicitly denying African Americans admittance, but operated under the restrictions of the Day Law, which was state legislation enacted in 1904, prohibiting Kentucky institutions from teaching Black and white students in the same school, which actually made it illegal to enroll African Americans. The Day Law was cited as the reason for rejecting the applications of 2 Nigerian students in 1948. In 1947, Walter Groves became president of Centre College. Once the Day Law was amended in March 1950 to allow colleges to voluntarily desegregate, Groves privately petitioned the Board of Trustees to enroll African American students. In 1954, Brown versus Board of Education struck down segregation laws, rendering the Day Law completely ineffectual. At this time, the Presbyterian synods asked trustees to adopt policies allowing all races to attend, and Groves lobbied even harder to get the board to enroll Black students. Groves was very much in favor of desegregation, but believed a formal policy would have to be supported by a decisive majority of trustees and faculty. In 1949, a faculty member had polled faculty on their views regarding admitting African Americans. 15 faculty said yes to admittance, 7 said no, and 4 were in favor but felt it wasn't the right time. In April 1956, the Women's Student Government petitioned the board to admit qualified students of any race, after a poll of women students supported this sentiment 89 to 31. Additionally, 94 of 112 women polled said they would not withdraw if African Americans were admitted. The Women's Student Government wrote the board another letter dated October 16, 1956, in which they requested the board's view on racial integration be addressed to the students. That fall, an art professor enrolled an African American student in his art course, with consent from the students in the class, but without the board's knowledge. Also in 1956, the Presbyterian Church said they would withhold their monetary appropriations from the college if Centre did not take action to integrate. Students and faculty mostly favored desegregation, but the board was still not budging, fearing student withdrawals, alumni backlash, and donor withdrawals. In February 1957, the board submitted a non-committal statement about moving towards integration, but no real action had been taken to move the resolution forward in practice. By this time, the differences on the issue of desegregation between President Groves and the board had come to a head, and Groves announced his intent to resign, which became official in April 1957. In July 1957, Thomas Spraggins took over as college president. Spraggins found a board polarized over the issue of integration, but made his stance clear. Centre would accept students of all races. In June 1958, the board finally adopted a formal policy of accepting all students regardless of race. In 1962, Timothy Cousy would be the first Black student of African descent to enroll at Centre. And in the fall of 1964, Jim Davis, Sharon Gill Gaskin, and Joyce Cross Marks were the first African American students to enroll. In 1972, Shirley Walker, the first African American professor, was hired. In the years following desegregation, the Black Student Union became an active presence on campus with an eye towards increasing the number of Black students and staff. Several African American students participated in the civil rights movement, including local protests against Danville barbershops that refused to cut the hair of Black customers. Integration was not always seamless or easy for these pioneers who paved the way, and inclusivity is an ongoing challenge today. And at this point, I am now going to hand it over to Ms. Jojo Marcelon, who will speak more in depth about the specific experiences of Center African American students in the era immediately following desegregation.
Thank you, Beth. Good evening, everyone. My name is Joanna Marcellin, AKA JoJo, and I am the incoming Diversity and Inclusion Coordinator. And I worked on the ACS project during my junior and senior year, if I remember correctly. And part of the project, of course, was conducting archival research, but my main responsibility was more so conducting oral histories with some of the pioneering Black students that integrated Center in the late 60s and early 70s, as Beth just said. So speaking to them was really riveting because unlike traditional interviews, oral histories focus on a person's entire life story, and it's all told from their point of view. So it was cool to see them eager to impart wisdom and share really, really intimate details about their personal lives and experiences. As mentioned by Carrie and Beth, the project was focused on the desegregation of the college, which, if you think about it, only happened 52 years ago. And the college is 202 years old. So there's a huge gap that needs to be filled in terms of recognition for this major change that has really paved the path for Black and brown students like myself, and many of you that are with us tonight, to get a bomb educational background that will help us mold our futures into whatever we want. So in the spirit of MLK Day, I'd like to share two stories that I gathered from my research that really encapsulate Dr. King's legacy of the impact nonviolent direct action can have. So first, James Mason attended Center from 1969 to 1973 and to share his experiences with me. And this one was talked about a little bit by Beth, but I will elaborate on it. So one day, James decided to go get a haircut from the local barber in Danville. And when he went in, the barber was already cutting the hair of someone else, a white customer. This was a Black barber, mind you. So, James just went in and sat down, picked up a magazine, and waited for his turn. A few moments passed by and he felt a tap on his shoulder, and it was the barber. The barber asked him if he could step outside real quick, kind of gave him the little nod thing, and James obliged. Once outside, the barber proceeded to tell James that if he wanted his hair cut, that he should come back on Sunday morning when the blinds are down, because his white customers didn't appreciate him cutting Black people's hair. So the barber didn't want them seeing him cutting James' hair, basically. So confused, James came back to campus and talked to some of his friends. They were all members of the BSU, and talked about next steps. And so from then, the group of Black students decided that the best course of action would to start peaceful protests. From there, a group of Black students visited all the barbershops in the area, asking if they would be willing to cut the hair of Black people, and all but one of them said no. They didn't really give an excuse other than it's my barbershop, so I can choose to service and not service whoever I want. So from that point, all the barbershops that refused, the students decided to protest them. There were peaceful marches and boycotts initially that were attended by both Center students and staff, including the dean. But ultimately, a group of students headed by a Black student named Ollie Lee Taylor sued the barbershops in town. And that case went all the way up to the Supreme Court, where the students ultimately won. So something that James said that stuck with me was, it wasn't the fact that we needed to go get our hair cut there. It was the fact that the law needed to change And we wanted to be recognized as being equally protected, a full citizen like anyone else. And then we would choose whether or not we would go get our haircut there. So it's not like the barbershop was hot or whatever. They just wanted to have a choice, just like everyone else, to decide where they wanted to get their hair done, as they should. So another story that I will also share really quickly was told to me by his wife, Nita Adams Mason. She attended center the same time James did, and was also a member of the BSU. One night there was an intramural basketball tournament going on, and the BSU team was going up against a fraternity team, and she didn't name the fraternity for good reason. Now, it was rush season, so the fraternities told the new recruits to do something that would either mock or intimidate the rival team. So what did they choose to do? They came dressed as members of the KKK. So obviously Nita was stunned. Every Black person on campus was in an uproar, and Nita said she cried for 3 days afterwards, because I can imagine that could be very traumatizing. So the situation was taken to the administration. However, she said that no disciplinary action about the game was taken against the players or the fraternity, as far as she knows. And it was frustrating, of course, for good reason. So feeling disappointed about the inaction of the college admin, Nita and a small group of her friends decided to take a stand. So you know how Cowan has each little group has their own designated table where they sit, and that type of stuff is extremely territorial for no reason, as small as center is, but it gets real. So they decided that they were going to sit and occupy the fraternity's table. They planned to get there early and stay until the end of dinner, and they weren't going to move no matter what nobody said. So most of the fraternity boys just sat in other places, except for one who decided to be bold and sit at the table anyways, which led to a small confrontation. However, Nita said that the result of the sit-in was that at least our voices were heard, and at least you can see that you can't just do this and get away with it. So those were just two examples of how, even though integration happened, it still did not diminish the lengths Black students had to go through just to be recognized and treated as equal human beings. It wasn't just this huge kumbaya. Whether it was petitioning the Supreme Court to be allowed to get their haircut in a town where they go to school in, or having a miniature yet powerful lunch counter sit-in to show that being mocked by people in KKK garb was not okay. There has been a complete historical oversight of the battles that these trailblazers had to overcome to make center the place that it is today. And our hopes for the conclusion of this project is to shine a light on these individuals and bring attention to their stories, because their flowers are long overdue. So with that being said, if you have any questions or if you're interested in becoming involved with the project, because there's still a lot more to do, I've included my email along with the emails of Carrie and Beth. And it wouldn't be an MLK Day presentation without ending with a quote. So I'll give you all my favorite one. You will change your mind, you will change your looks, you will change your smile, laugh, and ways, but no matter what you change, you will always be you. Thank you all so much for listening and tuning in with us. And I have the pleasure of now introducing Dr. Andrea Abrams, Associate Vice President for Diversity Affairs and Special Assistant to the President.
Good evening. I'm Andrea Abrams, the Chief Diversity Officer at Center College, and it's my pleasure this evening to introduce Melinda Weathers. Melinda Weathers is an emerging social justice advocate for Danville, Kentucky, and a 2002 graduate of Center College. She is employed by Eastern Kentucky University as a senior curriculum developer. Melinda earned a Bachelor's of Art in Sociology. She also holds a Master of Arts degree in Sociology from the University of Louisville. Melinda has spent most of her career serving families and advocating for at-risk children and vulnerable adults. She's heavily involved in her church, where she serves as an ordained evangelist, financial administrator, and president of the Women's Ministry. Melinda currently serves on the Diversity Equity Council for the Danville City Schools and she has been involved with several nonprofit agencies such as the Gladys Project, Big Brothers Big Sisters, and the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Melinda is the proud daughter of Bishop Larry D. Weathers Sr. and the late Lady Amanda Weathers. She has 4 siblings, 2 nieces, and 2 nephews. Melinda is called of God to be a voice for those who have none and stand for truth and justice. In the past year, I've gotten to work with Melinda. We have both participated in the Arts Center of the Bluegrass Project, The Art of Being Black. Along with others, Melinda and I have listened to the voices of Danville's African-American citizens as they reflect upon their churches, neighborhoods, entrepreneurship, and memories, and as they proclaim their visions for racial and social justice in Danville and beyond. In that project, I have seen the dedication that Melinda has for her community. In addition, Melinda profoundly shaped the project with her insightful social critiques and her creative suggestions. In part, these are skills gained when you get a sociology degree from Center College. But more so, that is a talent honed through the practice of being civically engaged, intellectually dynamic, and spiritually inspired. Those are the aspects of Melinda that I witnessed last year when she served as the keynote speaker for the Breonna Taylor Vigil at Center. However, Melinda did not speak. She preached. She preached the truth, she preached wisdom, and she preached love. I'm just getting to really know Melinda Weathers, but I suspect that truth, wisdom, and love are the core of who she is and what she does at all times and in all places. It is my pleasure to introduce our Martin Luther King Jr. Convocation speaker, Melinda Weathers.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abrams. What a gracious introduction. What a pleasure to be here tonight with you at my alma mater, Center College, which I love so dear and hold so dear to my heart. What an honor to be here just to share what's on my heart for this convocation. So thank you, Dr. Abrams, for the invitation. Thank you for that lovely introduction. To President Milton Moreland, thank you so much for this gracious opportunity to speak on this day of remembrance of one of the greatest advocates of justice, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We dare not honor Dr. King without giving great tribute and honor to his wife and companion, Mrs. Coretta Scott King, the architect of the King legacy and founder of the King Center. This day and this year also has special meaning and significance for Center College. Now, when I was here a few years ago, they never canceled classes. If it was snow, if it was ice, tornado, a windstorm, and I might have to confirm this with Ann Young, I don't even think we canceled for the vice presidential debate, if I remember correctly. For the first time in history, all classes and offices were closed on campus in honor of Martin Luther King Day. I salute this administration, faculty, staff, students, and alumni for acknowledging the significance of this day and taking the opportunity to reflect and be inspired by this great General Dr. King. For that, I say thank you. Before I move forward tonight, I must pause to honor the patriarch and the matriarch of what I refer to as the Weathers dynasty, my king and my queen, my dad, Bishop Larry D. Weathers Sr., and my mother, the late Amanda Weathers. I feel the gravity of this moment and would not be here but by the grace of God and my incredible parents. They poured into my life and spoke of success not as an option, but as a duty to then reach back and to serve others. I know my dad is watching and I believe he may be smiling. And I know as much as I miss my mother and I miss her deeply, especially in this moment, but I feel her spirit with me. And for that, I'm thankful. I'd be remiss not to honor another special woman in my life, Lady Rhonda Weathers. Thank you for your consistent support and encouragement. I love and appreciate you all. I've heard all of my life, don't forget the bridge that brought you over. I customized that phrase to my life experiences and vow never to forget the bridges, not just one, but the bridges that continue to carry me over to the call of God on my life. I'm thankful for this opportunity tonight. The title of this speech tonight is The Power of a Promise. All day long, I've been listening to other speeches and been just enjoying the moment, hearing such powerful speeches. And so perhaps this may be the last one you hear towards this evening. And of course, I pray. You know anything about me, I'm definitely praying before any engagement, because I feel I don't want to take advantage of this opportunity to speak and to share what I feel this community needs and what our nation needs. The power of a promise. Let me set the stage for you. It's the evening of Wednesday, April the 3rd, 1968. On the last day of his life at the prime age of 39, 1 year younger than me. Dr. King has the occasion to give a speech in support of sanitation workers who are on strike. And he gives this speech at the Bishop Charles Mason Temple in Memphis, Tennessee. You may be familiar with this speech. So after thanking Reverend Abernathy for the gracious introduction, Dr. King says, quote, "I'm delighted to see each of you here tonight in spite of a storm warning. You reveal that you are determined to go on anyhow. Something is happening in Memphis. Something is happening in our world," end quote. Centre College faculty, staff, students, and my fellow sisters and brothers, I'm delighted to be with you in this space and time. In spite of a storm of injustice, a storm of inequity, a storm of white supremacy, and an attack on our democracy, your presence, however virtually, reveals that you are determined to go on anyhow. In spite of the pressure to quit, you are determined to go on anyhow. In the midst of losing family and loved ones due to the pandemic of COVID and racism, your presence tonight reveals you are determined to go on anyhow. Something is happening at Centre College. Something is happening in Danville, in Kentucky, in the US of A, and yes, in our world. What we feel happening deep in our spirit is the power of a promise. Now, the validity and the authority of a promise is not based on when it was said, how it was said, or who it was said to. But the authority of a promise is nestled in who said it and who spoke it. In this same speech, the Right Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "I've seen the promised land." He goes on to say, "I may not get there with you, but I've seen it, and we're going to get there." It didn't matter if Mrs. Coretta Scott King saw it. It didn't matter if Martin III saw it, or Yolanda, or Dexter, or Bernice saw it. It didn't matter. Dr. King said in the last speech of his life, "I've seen it." And there lies the power of promise. When you look through the complexity of the lens called life, and when you grapple with systems of oppression and depression, what is it that you see? What is it that you see? Now, if all you see is despair and turmoil and bigotry and insurrection and sedition and all things virtual and mask mandates and conspiracy theories, you need to look again. Look again. In my world of social work, we say so often, you will find what you're looking for. You will find what you're looking for. Let me break it down to you for just a moment. Now, if you go into a home as a social worker, I spend lots of times in people's homes. So if I went into a home and if I focused on what all was wrong, that is what I would find. I would find those dirty dishes. I would find dirty laundry throughout the house. I would find those few cans of green beans or corn in the pantry. But this next part requires work. If you enter a home looking for what a family is doing well, it changes the game. You force yourself to see beyond what you see with your physical eyes. You force yourself to see beyond what you see with your physical eyes. And when you do that, it requires work. But when you do that, you walk away saying something like this: those dishes piled in the sink means they had food to eat. Dirty laundry means they have clothes to wear. Those little cans of green beans and corn and maybe some pinto beans, those little canned beans that if the power goes out, guess what? They still can eat. And some of y'all don't know how to cook. So if the power went out, you'd be up the creek. But when you'll find what you're looking for based on what you're looking for. I know that may not be a deep theological point, but it's important that we focus on what we want to see. When you will find what you're looking for. I want to inspire you on this evening to look again. Some of us have been too caught up and what's going on around us that we don't see what good is happening among us. My dad has shared this wisdom nugget with me throughout my life. He says so often, don't allow your current circumstances to dictate your future. Life has a way of turning things around. Don't allow your current circumstances to dictate your future. Life has a way of turning things around. Dr. King acknowledged the present pain. He acknowledged what they were having to endure. He didn't shy away from it, but he acknowledged that pain. But guess what? He held on to a promise. What he saw in the future is what gave him the courage and the tenacity to fight the good fight and to land on the right side of history. Some of us, talking to myself as well, some of us need to look again. See the power of a promise that King saw. See that destroying walls created to divide us. See the promise of bending the arc, as King describes, bending the arc of the moral universe towards justice. If you look beyond what you see with your physical eye, you will see that justice really is flowing like a river. And righteousness really is, it's flowing like a never failing stream. Healthy and necessary conversations are happening all over the world. New blood has joined the political process. Young people have been inspired to raise their voices and to demand change. Equity is no longer an option, it's required. Ignorance is no longer excused. Women are proven if you're mobilized right, you can flip a red state blue. The foundation of the good old boy system is cracking. Women of color are on the ballot, and one in particular, Vice President-elect, just for 2 more days. Don't you see it? Don't you feel it? The world is changing. The promised land that King saw is manifesting right before our eyes. But you got to force yourself to see beyond what you see. Now, the ball is in your court. The reins are in your hands. By the power invested in you, this is what I want to challenge you to do. Work for the good of all people. And that includes people who don't look like you, people who don't think like you, people who don't worship like you, people who have different theologies. We work for the good of all humanity. That's what King is challenging us as we celebrate his life, challenge us to work for the good of all people and to speak truth to power. Even when people don't want to hear it, to speak truth to power. Refuse to adjust to injustice. Refuse to adjust to injustice, but rather allow justice and righteousness to be the ruling authority. Call out inequities and bigotry, or your silence is complicity. Now, don't get mad at me because, everybody loves Dr. King. Dr. King even said it. He said, in the end, we will remember, what did he say? Not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Don't take it out on me. Dr. King said it. Use your privilege to stand with your disenfranchised and marginalized sisters and brothers. Worry less about what will harm you if you are to speak out, but focus more on what will happen to others if you say and do nothing. You have a voice. I want to challenge you tonight to use that voice. At the end of the day, my prayer is that we will lift every voice and sing. Till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. That we will let our rejoicing rise high as the listening sky. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. That we will sing a song full of faith that the dark past has taught us. That we sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. I'm delighted to be with you virtually tonight, in spite of a storm. Your presence tonight reveals that you are determined to go on anyhow. Something is happening here. Something is happening all over our world. In closing tonight, we stand on the power of a promise. Thank you, Dr. King. Thank you, Dr. King. We got it from here. Onward and upward. May God bless you and keep you is my prayer. Thank you so very much.
All right. Now, that was moving. That was powerful. And I want to say thank you. Thank you for that message tonight that touched me. Hopefully it touched many of us this evening, because there was a lot of words, a lot of wisdom, some knowledge dropped tonight. So the power of promise, and it's up to us to focus and to look for the good in all humanity, just as Dr. King did. And the world is changing. That's what we have to believe. And yes, if the power went out, I would starve. So there's that. So just so you know. So as a child, we had a saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words, they'll never hurt me. How foolish we were to think that back then. But no matter what anybody said, the first things we did was sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And we would stick our little tongues out. And I hadn't thought about this phrase in a very, very long time. When I was listening to an audio cast, an audio conversation about the future of education, one of the presenters happened to bring this phrase back to my psyche. But it wasn't just the phrase, it was the spin that the presenter put on it that made me sit straight up in my chair. Because at that moment, it exposed the fallacy and the danger in such a notion. So in case you're wondering, my name is Jessica Chisley. I'm a 2004 graduate of Center College. I walk these halls at Center College with our keynote speaker, Miss Melinda Weathers. And I am recently transitioning into the role of Assistant Director of Diversity and Inclusion Programming here. And I'm very happy to be doing the work. So back then, the college wasn't really as diverse as it is now. And I know, I just heard it, I felt it. Our BIPOC students out there are like, what? It's not that diverse right now. Well, before we get into that, we're gonna table that conversation and discussion for another day. But I will offer this. Center is more diverse now, perhaps, than even 10 years ago. So when we talk about looking for the good and we talk about perspective, there's a little something to think about. Also, I said a word that some of you may not be familiar with, BIPOC. BIPOC stands for Black, Indigenous, Person of Color. So several decades later, as I step into this role, a comment that I once overlooked in those early days came back into my consciousness. It was a remark in a casual conversation one day, and the remark was that my class, the class of 2004, had the most Black students in it. And the comment was made simply to note that there was a higher concentration in a single class than all of the other three classes combined. And what sticks with me isn't just that. What sticks with me is the way it seemed to affect and impact the other Black students on campus. They almost seemed to celebrate in that fact. And as I think a little deeper about the why of that, I now realize that the 10 to 12 of us, perhaps, signify change and progress on this campus in a way they previously had not seen. Now, if you will, just hang in there for two more little points. Let's draw our attention to two key words that I just said: progress, change. Both signify action. They show flow, movement, intention, advancement, as in working toward something, a goal or a destination. So in this moment right now, in the not so distant rearview mirror, as soon as recently as January the 6th, are jolting and horrifying reminders of the work that is yet to be done in this country right now to create that beloved community that Dr. King dreamed of some 57 years ago. The sad reality and the sad truth is that our country is in a state of unrest. People are hurting, people are crying, people are dying. And we are fighting ourselves in the midst of a pandemic that's fighting us all. And it continues to claim the lives of hundreds of thousands every single day. Prior to his passing on July the 17th of 2020, the late Congressman and civil rights icon, John Lewis, made this note. He said, there are forces that want to take us back to another place. Well, we don't want to go back. We want to go forward. Forward, he said. And that is the significance of this day. It serves as a reminder that our task and our challenge, actually no, our call to action is to keep our sleeves rolled up and to continue putting in the work until everyone in this country is treated justly, equally, and with dignity. And we can never be so naive in thinking that we've arrived, because you don't quite arrive in this work. It's the work that you have to keep in the forefront of your mind. You have to be intentional about this work. And so we can't think that things such as racism, discrimination, and hate are themes of the past. Racism is very much alive today, and it rears its ugly head in every single corner of the country. To achieve the unity, the peace, the equity, and the justice for all that Dr. King and so many others bled and died for, it takes the active and the consistent participation of each and every one of us. And in the words of the anonymous podcast educator who rocked my world that night with this statement, sticks and stones can most assuredly break bones, but words plant seeds in the soul that take root in the spirit. So the question is, how do we move forward? We can start with our thoughts, because our thoughts become our words become our actions, our intentions, and our habits. We can remember that words carry power and choose words that sow love, words that sow hope, peace, joy, patience, reconciliation, and healing into the hearts and the minds of others. And so, Ms. Weathers charged you. I'm going to charge you as well. My charge to each of you tonight watching this stream is to choose to be a vessel of good and a light in this world. For where the light is brightest, the shadows are most certainly darkest and deepest. I want to thank you for the privilege of your time. And before we move on to Tempe, who's going to come up and lead us and lift every voice and sing, hopefully I don't crash the whole thing, but I'm going to try to share my screen and show you a video that explains a little bit about how a poem written by a civil rights icon and the leader of the NAACP at the time, how it became an anthem for an entire people. All right. Fingers crossed, everybody. Here we go.
At the dawn of the 20th century, America was a country full of promise and hope for many. Black Americans faced a different reality, a nation separate and unequal. Yet their hope persisted. Pained by inequality, but inspired by resilience, writer and civil rights activist James Weldon Johnson put pen to paper. His words would become a unifying call, a hope for a brighter tomorrow, a timeless exhortation to lift every voice and sing.
And now we're going to welcome Miss Tempe Hostrup. to lead us and lift every voice and sing.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the day that hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat have our not weary feet come to the place on which our fathers sang. We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered, out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where with the white gleam of star is cast. God of our weary tears, God of our silent tears, thou who has brought us thus far on our way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, kept us forever in the path we pray, lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee, least our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee, shadowed beneath the hand, may we forever stand. True to our God, true to our native.
Thank you. That was beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Tempe. Thank you to the students who participated in tonight's program. Thank you to President Moreland. Thank you to those who presented the Desegregation Project. Thank you to Jessica for the closing remarks. And this night was in so many ways so beautiful and so powerful. The only frustrating thing was that we couldn't give Melinda Weathers the round of applause that she deserved after she came to us with the word and the truth and the inspiration. And I thank you so, so much for being our keynote speaker. Thank you to everyone who has been a part of this event, both those who belong to the Center community and those who belong to the Danville community. I wish you a good night.